Oh, yeah. I'll be out there this week if I don't hurt myself in practice. I'll be fine.
Is that what happened last time?
Yeah, last week I was supposed to play a lot, and I hurt my groin in practice. So, Coach Garrett, I thought I was going to be a game-time decision. Coach Garrett was just like, shut it down, be ready for next week.
Today's Friday, October 19th. This is the Cowboys Beat on CLNS Media. I'm Ari Temkin. Brice Butler will be our guest today, a guy that is familiar certainly around the Dallas Cowboys, but a guy that hasn't made much of an impact so far this season. So we'll see if this is the week that he can make an impact. Brice Butler, wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, joins the Cowboys Beat today right here on CLNS Media. But this week, after a humongous victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars, very lopsided victory, the attention in certainly the DFW and Dallas Cowboys nation turned away from the status of Jason Garrett and more focused in on how the Cowboys can improve this season. There were rumors out of Oakland that wide receiver Amari Cooper is on the trade block. There are other rumors surfacing about potential other players, wide receivers, that could be on the trade block. So that has been the major discussion point throughout this week, whether or not the Dallas Cowboys should be upgrading their receiving core midseason. And I think the short answer to that question is, yeah, they absolutely should. The Cowboys told us all offseason, they've told us all season they don't need a number one wide receiver. And even though they beat Jacksonville pretty handedly without one, it's very difficult to win and win consistently when you don't have a weapon on the outside lined up as the X that commands double teams. Cole Beasley had a tremendous game on Sunday, 9 catches, 101 yards receiving. And the way that the Jacksonville Jaguars defended him was by playing single coverage against him. Tyler Patman, they played him straight up. Well, traditionally, teams like to bracket him. So if you have a legitimate number one wideout, an X on the outside, that he commands attention, then you're not really able to do the same thing to Cole Beasley. Now, as it pertains to Amari Cooper, the report out of Oakland was that they wanted a number one draft pick for him, which, good luck. He's on the 4th year of a 5-year rookie contract. Next year he'll get paid $14 million a year. And then, of course, if you trade a first-round draft pick for him, you're going to want to give him a long-term extension, because why would you trade draft capital for a guy that you wouldn't then pour money into? Now, Amari Cooper is a very talented receiver. He can get open. He can run all the routes. He's very good at creating separation. I know some people have pointed to his lack of production the last couple of years, but he's still a very, very good receiver who has 2,000-yard receiving seasons in his career, and he's not even 25 years old. There's also the questions of, does he like football? Michael Lombardi said that. He's not sure that he's heard that he likes football. Okay. I mean, whatever. He might hate football, but he had 2,000-yard receiving seasons, including a 1,600-yard receiving season his second year of the pros. So I don't care if he loves football, hates football, whatever the case is, he's put up great numbers and production. Not everybody loves their job, but if this is a guy that can continue to produce, it doesn't really matter if he doesn't love football or not. But it's just too rich for my blood. There's too much money to have to pour into him, and I'm just not all about giving up a first or a second-round draft pick. Now, a guy that I've been talking about is Demaryius Thomas. Demaryius Thomas produces, he's older, but he's going to get cut by Denver after this season because he's on the hook next year for $17 million. Now, if you cut him, you're only going to have $3.3 million in dead money. So the Broncos are going to cut him after this year. So maybe if you're the Cowboys, you can call him up and say, hey, would you take a 5th or a 6th for Demaryius Thomas? If that's the case, that's a late round flyer to give up on a guy that has number one type potential. And look, it's also cheap because, as I mentioned, you pay a 5th or a 6th round draft pick for him, and then you're basically using him as a rental, and you're only going to have $3 million in dead money against the cap next year, which is not horrible, especially for a guy that has played in 16 games in 6 straight seasons. He has 1,000 yards receiving in every one of those seasons, except for last year when he was at 950 yards receiving. And remember, since Peyton Manning retired in Denver, they've had a smorgasbord of bad quarterbacks there. So he produces regardless of who they have at quarterback. So Demaryius Thomas would be the guy that if I'm the Cowboys, I would be looking at. But realistically, teams in football don't really make trades at the deadline. That's really not something that happens a lot because football is a sport that lends itself to cohesion. Everybody has to be on the same page for every play, and if one thing's off, then the whole play will be off. That is at the core of what football is, and you need all 11 on the same page. So to just bring a guy in at the receiver position and just expect him to just come right in and pick up the offense and know exactly where they need to be and know how to run everything, that's just a very, very difficult thing to do, especially for an organization like the Dallas Cowboys that refuses to improve their roster from outside the organization. And so, while I think this sort of question, the question of whether or not the Cowboys are going to be willing to go outside their organization to improve their roster, that's really a question that we need to be answered after this season. Will they make a trade now? Probably not. Because as long as Stephen Jones has been running this operation, they've drafted, they've developed, they've signed and retained the players that merit second contracts. They haven't really brought in outside free agents. They haven't really made, big moves when it comes to improving their roster beyond the ways in which they've drafted. So for a team that doesn't really go out and sign outside free agents in the offseason, it's hard to believe that a team's going to do that in the middle of the season, even though the need for a legitimate number one wideout is staring them in the face. And I am not going to give up a first or a second round draft pick to do so, but a guy like Demaryius Thomas, if you could have him for a late round pick and it's not really cost prohibitive, it would certainly be a smart and prudent move to improve a roster that, let's be honest, had a big offensive performance last week against Jacksonville, but it's tough to view them as being able to get that kind of production moving forward, especially without a legitimate number one wideout. The Cowboys said they didn't need a legitimate number one wideout. They were wrong. And look, maybe Michael Gallup is that guy in the future. Maybe he's that guy. But as I've talked about on the Cowboys Beat, the last rookie receiver to have over 1,000 yards receiving was Amari Cooper. So it's been a long time since there's been a rookie in the NFL that's gone over 1,000 yards. And Gallup's a third-round pick. He's shown flashes of it. And there's no reason to believe that he wouldn't be significantly better next year and perhaps in position to be a legitimate, quote-unquote, number one. But that doesn't help you right now. Right now, you need a number one. But again, not sure the Cowboys would be willing to make that type of move in free agency, or rather in trades. But now you look at this from the big picture standpoint, and in recent history, the organizational philosophy has not been to improve the roster from outside. I mean, the last outside free agent that this team brought in, it was like a big splash beyond like the, Joe Thomases of the world or the Cameron Flemings of the world. Like, yeah, those are outside free agents, but we're talking about minimal investments, low risk, low reward, really. The last big-time free agent that this team brought in was Brandon Carr. It's been a long time since they've done it. Now, maybe, the reason they haven't is because they've been steeped in salary cap hell. We know that Jerry was frivolous, spent tons of money, and was careless with the salary cap, and put the Cowboys in bad position where they had to continually restructure Tony Romo's deal just to make the books work year after year. But next year's the year. Next year's it. They have cap money right now to spend, and next year, Tony Romo's dead money, Jason Witten's dead money, Dez Bryant's dead money. Poof. Gone. Now they're going to have to retain DeMarcus Lawrence. They're going to make a huge and significant investment into DeMarcus Lawrence. They also will probably do the same thing for Byron Jones. I would imagine with the year that he's having. Do they want to bring back Cole Beasley? He's going to want to get paid. He said this week he wants to be the highest paid slot receiver in the game. So there are some internal decisions they're going to have to make. But the truth of the matter is, Cole Beasley's important. He's a complementary piece. He can't be your number one. Okay, you need a guy that's an X receiver that plays on the outside to be your number one. And the thing is, maybe Michael Gallup's that guy, but maybe he's not. And you can't go into the draft and say, well, let's just take the best wide receiver available and have him become a number one. Because it rarely works like that. Rookie receivers rarely transition and automatically put up 1,000-yard receiving seasons. The only guy that looks like he's going to get there this year is Calvin Ridley, and he's lined up opposite Julio Jones in an offense with Matt Ryan and Steve Sarkisian that throws the football all around. That's just not the way the Cowboys play. So the Cowboys, this offseason, we will see how much this philosophy of not going outside the organization to spend money truly stretches. It is not the right move to sit on your cap space and not spend it, especially as it pertains to improving the roster in areas where you have not drafted well or you haven't fulfilled certain positional groups through the draft. Because that's what it's all about. Look at teams that win titles every year. They're all built in their core through the draft. That's philosophically where the Cowboys got this thing right. But the question is, did Stephen Jones overcorrect? Did he overcorrect from the faults of his father, who spent he didn't have a salary cap? They've drafted well. The Dallas Cowboys, with Stephen Jones and Will McClay running the show, have drafted very, very well. But that's only part of it, because teams that win Super Bowls draft well, but then figure out where they didn't draft well or where they haven't put a lot of draft capital, and that's where they spend money in free agency. This team could drastically upgrade the receiver position this season, but certainly in the offseason, they could certainly stand to upgrade the tight end position and the safety position too. But whether or not they will remains to be seen. But the ability for this franchise to win that coveted 6th championship depends on their ability to spend in free agency. You cannot build a championship team without it. It can't be your team. It can't be the core of your team. You will fail if the core of your team is only built through free agency, but the same is also true in the inverse. You will fail building the way the Cowboys have tried to build in recent history, as much as they failed the previous decade where they tried to build the exact opposite way. I'm Ari Temkin. This is the Cowboys Beat on CLNS Media. We are going to preview Cowboys and Skins. It's the latest installment of the must-win game of the week. But now let's visit with the wide receiver of the Dallas Cowboys, Brice Butler. And Brice, what are these speakers you've got playing throughout the locker room?
Some company, I'm not going to disclose it yet because we're still talking business, but they sent me some speakers and I'm just checking them out.
You like them?
Solid so far. You got to be paired together though, because their thing is they sync up to 100 of them. One of them is not good enough.
So, as a DJ, how do you judge speakers?
It just gotta sound good. I don't mind.
Is it bass?
No, bass is
easy?
Bass is not I don't want to hear it in my face. I just want to feel
totally,
it.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's all it is with that. But I mean, they sound good. You turn them up, they sound good. They just don't sound good. It's just not loud enough by itself.
So is this the week
for
an opportunity for you?
Oh yeah, I'll be out there this week if I don't hurt myself in practice. I'll be fine.
Is that what happened last time?
Yeah, last week I was supposed to play a lot and I hurt my groin in practice. So Coach Garrett, I thought I was going to be a game time decision. Coach Garrett was just shut it down, be ready for next week. So.
Well, obviously now with the injury to Tavon, we don't know how long he's going to be out for. It seems like an opportunity for you, especially because of the way they use Tavon down the field.
Yeah. Tavon is a big part of our offense, doing fast sweeps, and, he's a fast guy, so obviously throwing the ball down the field. He runs the Z position, and I've been running the X, so, me and Mike are going to run the X position, and the other guys are going to run the Z and the F, so. I mean, however they want to use me, I'll be ready to go. I haven't played all season, so I'm excited to get out there.
What's it been like for you being back here? What's different about this place?
It's been good, man. Nothing. Still wearing white, navy blue. You know what I'm saying? So, most of the guys are the same. So, it was almost like I never left when I got back in here. It was just some new faces that I had to get used to and stuff like that, so it's been cool.
Schematically, though, I mean, especially in training camp, the talk of what they wanted the wide receivers to do with Sanjay Lal being here, I mean, is it different? I mean, you obviously weren't here in training camp, but being here now.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely different. Sanjay's a really good coach, different type of coach, really coaches the details, and you definitely want that type of coach. He's one of those coaches where, like, you might score a touchdown, but, like, he might be like, everything leading up to the part of the catch was terrible. You know what I'm saying? Which is good. It keeps you on your toes, and it keeps you, keeping attention to the details.
Is the offense different?
No.
It's the same offense.
It's been different for like 20 years.
No, but I mean, because even I remember Linehan in training camp talking about he wanted, because you were talking about X and F and Z, but Linehan in camp was saying, well, the X can run any route. You can run an X route in the slot.
That's like that. Okay. It's been like that. Though. You would see Dez in the slot sometimes last year. You would see me in the slot, Terrence, and we all play different positions. So, yeah, it's been the same though. Nice. It's the same. We're obviously different wrinkles, different personnel, but it's the same. The base offense is the same.
Were you surprised by what happened against Jacksonville?
No, actually, this is what I said before the game. I was telling guys, I was like, this game can either go one or two ways. I was like, it's going to be a really close, low-scoring game, field goal game, kind of like the Texas game. Or I was like, it can be lopsided. But I was like, if it is lopsided, we'll be the team that wins.
Why do you think that?
Their offense just has been struggling without Fournette. So, our defense is good. So, I said that before we played the game. Like, I told a couple guys, I was like, look, this either can go lopsided or real tight.
All right, so how's it going to go with Washington?
You got to get the win. That's all we got to do. We just got to get the win.
But is it the same kind of, it could be lopsided or be close? Or?
Nah, we just need to get the win.
As far as the Jacksonville game, like, what was different about Cole? Was it just that, like, Tyler Pappas was on
They
him?
were playing man-to-man, and they weren't trying to bracket him. And the teams want to do that, go ahead.
Is that what happened? I mean, is that why?
Yeah, they try. I mean, they have really good corners. They got all-pro corners in their team, so I guarantee you, they came into that game thinking that they could guard, him. And, earlier in the week, he was saying it, like, I hope they go man-to-man. That's what they tried to do, so he had a good game.
Is that how teams defend him, like, pretty much every week?
Like
bracketed?
Man-to-man?
Bracketed?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's how it's been for a while. Like, Jason Witten and Cole, they try to bracket them, take those two guys out, and force them to throw the ball on the outside.
So if you're able to get some deep throws, some deep opportunities, that could open it up?
Any opportunity, I'm fine with it. I haven't played all season, so whatever opportunity I can get, dog, I'm ready to go.
Hopefully it's this week, man.
Yes, sir.
Thanks to Brice Butler. Could this be the week for Brice Butler? Not just because Terrence Williams is now facing a 3-game suspension, but because of the health of Tavon Austin. Obviously, though, they play at different spots of the field, but it will certainly open up some potential opportunities for Brice Butler. So this could be the week. Now, the Cowboys and Redskins, Sunday afternoon in Landover, Maryland. The Redskins in first place in the division at 3-2. Cowboys nipping at their heels, 3-3, along with the Eagles. Those are basically three teams left standing in this horrible division. And every week, because there's only 16 games, this is the latest of the must-win games of the season. It seems like every week it's a must-win game. It's a cliche, and remember, they're not must-wins unless they literally must win. However, the advanced analytics on making the postseason are changed dramatically by the Cowboys winning this game. They win this game, they have a greater than 50% chance to make the playoffs. If they don't, though, they have a less than 15% chance to make the playoffs. And I guess it makes sense because if they win, they'd be 2-0 in the division and would effectively then have a big lead on Washington. We know that the Giants are already out of it, so it would basically make this a 2-team race between the Cowboys and Eagles. 50% chance. But if they lose, now they're basically looking up in the division, down 2 games to the Washington Redskins. I say 2 because they're basically trailing them right now by a half game. If they lost, it'd be a game and a half. And, of course, since it's a divisional game, it's basically the extra half game. So that's where the analytics come into play here. Now, look, the Redskins are 3-2, but they're not very good, to put it mildly. They're kind of dissimilar to the recent Redskins teams that we've seen. And I'll give you a good metric that will indicate just how different they are as a football team. But in his last 54 starts, Kirk Cousins, the former quarterback of the Washington Redskins, has turned the football over 55 times. 55 turnovers in his last 54 games. Now, conversely, Alex Smith has 28 turnovers in that same time frame. 28 turnovers in 51 games for Alex Smith, 55 turnovers in 54 games for Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins giveth, and Kirk Cousins most assuredly taketh. And that was the issue with Kirk. Is he'd put up big-time numbers, but he would turn the ball over a ton, a lot of interceptions. 18 fumbles lost in that same time frame, 54 games. Alex Smith, only 6 lost fumbles in that same time frame. So Alex Smith plays a very good ball control style of offense. Kirk Cousins does not. The Cowboys have won 4 straight against the Washington Redskins. They've swept them 2 straight years, which means Dak Prescott, as a quarterback of the Cowboys, is 4-0 against his hated division rival. Now, his rookie year, they were even in both games on the turnover ratio. Even. The Cowboys were really, really good that year, right? Like, unbelievably good. So they just outdueled Kirk Cousins in those games. But last season, the Cowboys were +6 in the 2 games they played against the Redskins in the turnover ratio. +6. So it's significant. Remember, you win the turnover battle in the NFL, you win the game 80% of the time. 80%. It is the most important metric that correlates to winning in the entire NFL. It's the most important one. The Cowboys were +6 in the turnover ratio last year, the 2 games they played against Washington. So turnovers, more cliches, are really important here in this game on Sunday. Don't turn the ball over. Because if they turn the ball over, Washington's not going to. Washington plays a very, very conservative style on offense. They're very similar to the Cowboys offensively. In fact, they run similar plays, but they don't turn the ball over. They run the football a lot, and they play ball control. They don't take lots of shots down the field. Everything is underneath. Adrian Peterson plays such a humongous role in the success that they have. What's amazing to me is they are averaging 52 yards rushing in the 2 losses they have this season. The Redskins, the 2 losses, are only rushing the football 52 yards per game. The 3 wins, 160 yards per game. So it's pretty obvious what their game plan is to winning. They don't turn the ball over, and they run the football effectively. When they do that, they win. And when they don't, and probably more to the point, when Adrian Peterson isn't going, they don't win. Now, on the other side, their defense is okay, but certainly not a defense that's anywhere close to what Jacksonville was last week when the Cowboys, hung 40 on them. Now, they've got a pretty good interior of their defensive line. In the last 2 draft picks they've had, both interior defensive linemen from Alabama, Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Those guys are pretty effective, and probably more to the point, Jonathan Allen's really, really good. Ryan Kerrigan's good. But beyond that, there's not many playmakers for this Washington defense. And they really struggle in the back end because they seem to play a complicated scheme defensively that doesn't really have everybody on the same page, which makes them very, very prone to missed assignments, giving up big plays in the passing game. We've seen that time and time again. Now, they've been able to overcome it in some of these wins because, well, against Carolina last week, Cam Newton was horrible, and the Panthers had tons of turnovers. But because they play so conservatively on offense, they sort of wait for a team to make the mistakes that they can play into. But when they can't run the football and the opposing team isn't really turning the ball over, they're not going to win. Now, the Cowboys are going to play this week without Tavon Austin, and it's weird to think, but he's such an important piece to what they're doing offensively because he's kind of the key to everything. Beyond Zeke, right? He's kind of the key to everything in the passing game. But to give you an example of what Tavon Austin does, Tavon Austin is great for the Cowboys' pre-snap motion. He gets the defense worried about where he's going because he's been effective down the field with deep passes. He's been effective on jet sweeps. He's been effective on screens and in other areas of the field too. But those three in particular stand out because when you're worried as a defense about this guy taking the top off of your defense and beating you straight line in a 9 route because he's got that great speed, well, you have to protect against that. So that opens up the screen game. It opens up the jet sweeps. But now if you look at the Cowboys and they run some of a motion that resembles the jet sweep, and then you fake it to him and then run to the other side, defenses and specifically linebackers are going to be drawn to what Tavon Austin is doing. You force with Tavon Austin indecision on the part of the defense. Well, without Tavon Austin in the lineup, they're going to be missing that. And so much of their motion on offense is dependent upon Tavon Austin and the defense accounting for him. Now, look, statistically speaking, none of the receivers for the Dallas Cowboys are really doing much of anything, aside from Cole Beasley, who basically had an entire season of production in one game last week. But as I mentioned before, Beasley was at his best, and we heard Brice Butler saying this too, because they didn't bracket him. Most teams bracket him with coverage. They basically say, beat us somewhere else, and the Cowboys can't. They don't have guys that get good release off the line of scrimmage. That's the problem with not having a number one wideout. So if Washington decides to bracket Cole Beasley and not play him straight up man-on-man, then where are the Cowboys going to go to have success against this secondary? And in the same way, when you look at a couple of weeks back against Houston, where the Cowboys didn't have success, despite the fact that Houston had a really, really poor secondary, it's because Houston's pass rush really sped up the clock on Dak Prescott, the quarterback. So, what we saw last week was an effective read option offense for the Dallas Cowboys. The biggest reason for their success last week in offense was because of the read option. That's even more important this week because you don't have Tavon Austin to keep the defense guessing where you're going with the ball. And because Washington has such an effective interior of their defensive line, you'd certainly like to see them rush on the perimeter, but rushing in the middle is going to be difficult. Now, perhaps they can do it with Zeke, but the biggest piece of this remains. For the Cowboys to win on Sunday, they have to do two things. They can't turn the ball over. They cannot turn the ball over. And they have to stop Adrian Peterson. They have to stop Washington's rushing attack. The Redskins have averaged 52 yards per game in their 2 losses this year and 160 yards per game in their wins. The difference between stopping them and not stopping them is that. I'm Ari Tepkin. This is the Cowboys Beat on CLNS Media. Make sure, if you have not already, to hit that subscribe button on the podcast. And as always, I'll ask you to subscribe and rate the podcast. Also, a big announcement. I'm now part of SiriusXM's Big 12 network, so I'm going to have a daily talk show on SiriusXM Channel 375 starting Monday at 7 o'clock Central, 7 to 10 a.m. Central on SiriusXM Channel 375 if you get it. Of course, I also stream daily as well on Facebook at facebook.com/Watch Phantom. At Phantom, we put you at the center of the Dallas sports discussion. So come talk Cowboys with us Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock noon at facebook.com/Watch Phantom, FANTOM. And last but certainly not least, I'm part of the Dallas Cowboys radio network. I am the pre- and post-game host, so if you have not yet already, make sure to check it out. on 105.3 The Fan locally in DFW or on any of the over 300 Cowboys affiliates across this great nation. The Dallas Cowboys pregame show and postgame show. We've got lots of fun. Myself and Jesse Holly. It's been a great ride so far, so won't you come and join us for the rest of this regular season on the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network. But for now, I'm out. Peace.